This story starts in the lead up to Christmas. To set the scene, I live near Glasgow in Scotland. I stay with my parents, siblings, cats, and dogs. We're a close-knit family and often spend nights together in the living room, watching TV, playing games, and catching up on our lives. At the time of this story, I was 16, turning 17. I was in high school, but getting closer to leaving and starting my education outside of it. In the days leading up to Christmas, during one of those late nights together, we were watching A Christmas Carol. We often have movie nights around Christmas, and it's one of my favorite things about that time of year. During the movie, we heard a knock at the door. This wasn't unusual, so we didn't think much of it. My mom got up to answer it, but nobody was there. The street was empty. Our garden wrapped from the front of the house around to the back, so she checked along the side of the house too. But there was nobody there either. She came back inside, and we resumed the movie. A few days later, I was sitting at the living room table doing exam work when I heard another knock. I paused my work and went to answer the door, but again, nobody was there. We assumed it was probably neighborhood kids playing a prank. Where I'm from, kids sometimes get bored and cause trouble instead of finding something better to do. In Scotland, there's a game called Chappie, where kids knock on someone's door and run away laughing. It's stupid, but as a kid, the adrenaline rush of someone opening the door to nobody, there can be weirdly fun. We have a family group chat where we keep each other updated on things, and throughout that week, several family members mentioned experiencing the same thing. The one that stood out the most was something my dad experienced. At the time, my dad usually stayed up later than everyone else, either playing Xbox or watching shows once the house was quiet. One night around 11:30, when the street was silent and all the kids would have been inside, he heard a very quiet knock. He was confused because of the time. He checked through the peephole before opening the door, but he saw nobody. He slowly unlocked and opened the door to look outside. Again, nobody was there, just a quiet, empty street. He locked the door and came upstairs to ask if anyone had heard it. But because the knock was so quiet, nobody else had. This started to unsettle us because it had been happening repeatedly. Nobody had ever seen or heard anyone outside except for the knocking itself. Usually, when kids do this, you hear them laughing or running away. This felt different. Christmas Day is when everything escalated. We spent the day with family opening presents, sharing gifts, watching movies, playing games, and eating way too much food. It was a great day. Later that night, I felt sick from eating so much, which always happens to me on Christmas. So I went upstairs to lie down. I ended up dozing off and woke up hours later. When I checked my phone, it said 2:01 a.m. Everyone else was in bed and the house was completely silent. I knew I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. Once I wake up, it's hard for me to sleep again no matter what time it is. So I stayed on my phone in the dark, scrolling through social media instead of turning the TV on, watching Christmas haul videos and messaging friends who were still awake. After a while, I heard a faint knock. I wasn't sure if it came from my door, my window, or if I imagined it. I sat up straight in bed staring into the dark room with my heart racing. I didn't want to move. I knew nobody should be outside at that time on Christmas night. I didn't know if the past few weeks were just getting into my head or if someone was actually inside the house. My room is on the second floor, so someone being at my window would be very unlikely. After what felt like forever, I finally worked up the courage to open my bedroom door. As I did, I heard what sounded like footsteps coming up the stairs. My brain immediately assumed it was my dad coming up to bed after staying up late, like he usually did. I stepped into view of the staircase to tell him I was still awake and had heard the knocking again. That's when I realized it wasn't my dad. It was a man I had never seen before. I immediately felt sick when I saw him. I wondered if this was the person behind all the knocking. He was already inside the house. He was staggering as he climbed the stairs and looked heavily intoxicated. I slowly backed into my room, luckily without him seeing me, and quietly shut my door. I could hear him walking around and opening doors, going into each room one by one. I remember thinking it was only a matter of time before he reached mine. I completely froze and didn't know what to do. It felt like all my common sense disappeared. Eventually, I opened my door slightly and saw him coming out of my younger sister's room. That's when my brain finally kicked back into action. I ran to my parents' room and woke them up, telling them there was a man inside the house. My mom woke up instantly, while my dad was still groggy. We went downstairs together and found the man passed out on the couch with my dad's beers opened and scattered around him. My mom shouted at him to get out. He woke slightly and angrily insisted the house belonged to him. We tried to get him up, but he was completely dead weight. My mom slapped him trying to wake him, but he barely reacted. A few minutes later, my dad came fully downstairs, saw what was happening, and immediately took control. He shouted at the man that this was not his house and threatened him to leave. The man refused. My dad eventually had to physically lift him off the couch and drag him out the side door. He forced him outside and warned him not to come back before shutting the door. We thought it was finally over. But seconds later, glass suddenly shattered toward us. The man had punched through the window, sending broken glass inside. He pushed his face through the broken glass like something out of The Shining. While my dad went to call the police, the man started shouting aggressive threats, saying he now owned the house, that he knew what we looked like, and that he would return. Needless to say, we were all in shock. Eventually, he left, and the police arrived. They took statements from all of us. Mine was the longest since I had seen him first. Luckily, because it had snowed that night, there was a clear trail of blood leading down the street. Police followed it to a nearby playground where they found the man lying on the ground with blood and glass in his hands. They arrested him and later confirmed they believed he was the intruder. Our window was replaced the next morning. Later, I got a restraining order against the man because of my age and the threats he made. He was fined and given community service instead of jail time. When police questioned him about the weeks of knocking, he denied it. It turned out he had actually lived in our house years before we moved in. He claimed he had simply gotten drunk and went into the wrong house. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt, but to this day, we still have no explanation for the knocking before that night. And sometimes, even now, I still feel like I hear it again.